Welcome back to Pillocks of Eternity with Pyrion, Flax, and Lewis.
Hey, Flex.
Hey, what's
How
up?
you doing?
I'm doing great.
So, one thing I mentioned last time was the grandfather's bike
Yes,
thing.
what the fuck is that about, please?
Well, it's a little bit like a transporter in Star Trek. Okay, so you know the idea of
Your
a transporter.
grandfather had a transporter as a bicycle.
Did you watch that CGP Grey video he just did lately about transporters?
Who's CGP Grey?
He's a YouTuber who does great videos. You should check him out.
Okay.
They're quite interesting. But basically, he talks about how the transporter is basically a suicide box because it disassembles you.
Right.
And completely puts you together again at the other end, right? And there have been moments when the transporter malfunctions. So, for example, you've got to imagine the transporter as a photocopier.
Yeah.
Okay. Which destroys the original.
Right.
So imagine Scotty in the transport room. Imagine there was a malfunction, right? And the transport happened, and Captain Kirk went down to the planet, but he didn't. So he was down on the planet, but he was also still in the transport room, right?
Right.
And because the particle emitter or whatever didn't destroy him properly, so maybe Scotty had to get a phaser out and shoot Captain Kirk. You know,
Wow.
Do you see what I mean? To destroy the original, right? So in a sense, you don't necessarily die, but another you is created that thinks it's live forever. Do you see what I mean?
No, absolutely, yeah.
It doesn't know. So you could be right now a person. So, for example, in the same way, okay, imagine that taken to an extreme. Every night you go to sleep, and when you wake up, you're a new you with all of your memories, but the old you has died. And in a way that does happen because the human body recycles all of its cells, okay? And so the human body changes and switches out all of its cells the average age of a cell in your body is about 3 years old. So even when you're old, very old, some cells don't, some of the ones in your eyes actually stay forever, but most of the cells in your body get recycled. All the bones get swapped over, all the cells in your brain get swapped over, everything gets swapped over over about a 3 year period. So the average age of your body is only about 3 years old. Even if it looks old and wrinkly, that's because of the nature of the replacement. The reason that happens is because the cells get replaced, okay?
Right.
So it's a little bit like a grandfather's bike analogy. So say I took my granddad's bike into the shop and I replaced the wheels, okay, because they were knackered. And then next week I took it in again and I replaced the frame because it was knackered. And next week I took it in again and I replaced the seat because it was knackered. And next week I came in and I replaced every other bit, like the brakes, because they were knackered. So I kept all the original bits of that bike, right, that I'd replaced. I could put them back together and make my grandfather's bike, but I have a bike that I'm riding right now, which is my grandfather's bike. Do you understand?
Of course I understand.
Which of those is my grandfather's bike?
Well, I guess that's a philosophical question.
Well, this is the thing about the transporter room too, in a sense. It's, if you take it apart, everything. We're playing Pillars of Eternity. I found a woman who was an old dwarf. She was a miserable old bitch. So I summoned her. I checked out her brain, and she turned out to be a dwarf, and from Duggans Battery.
Yay!
And apparently, she actually died and got taken over by this dwarf and attacks me. So unfortunately, I have to kill her, which I didn't intend to do. Anyway, that's not quite the story. I did find another dwarf.
Lewis, leave her alone!
I know. I felt terrible. I did find another dwarf who I could have awakened a soul in, who possibly wouldn't have been as angry, but it was the maid, the maid dwarf in the pub, and I liked her, and I didn't want to mess her life up, really.
Right.
Some people,
so you
I
just
guess,
picked a stranger.
Some people would argue that, maybe she needed to be looked after by like a brave dwarf from Duggans Battery. So maybe awakening the soul in her would have toughened her up. And maybe this will come back to bite me in the ass. I don't know this decision.
Maybe, we'll find out.
But she was a fairly old woman, and I think she was dying
anyway. Do we
anyway.
have to go back to the guy with the constructs now and tell him what's up?
So no, she told me the song
Ah.
that the dwarves used to go into Duggans Battery. So I now know what I need to say to get in there. So I'm going to head back there and sing the song.
So go back to the grandfather's bicycle thing, right?
Yeah.
I guess it comes down to this: is the bike defined by what it physically is from the point of construction, and if so, that means that it's actually not a bicycle, but just a bunch of metal that's been bent into a particular shape, which was mined from the earth. I mean, you could keep going back to its original state. I mean, what's made the bicycle is that it was shaped into a bicycle. It is used as a bicycle. So the parts of it don't define it any more than the fact that the iron was mined from the ground. It's not defined by its origin so much as its utility at that point. So if you have the bicycle and I'm riding it around and I'm using it and I refer to it as my grandfather's bicycle, it's not essentially, when it comes out of the factory floor, it's just a bicycle. When my grandfather buys it, it's now my grandfather's bicycle. But that's just a naming convention for the bicycle that he's using at that time. I mean, you could go back. At what point does it stop? It was still a bicycle before it was your grandfather's bicycle. And if you took any of those parts off your grandfather's bicycle and put them on someone else's, that would then be part of their bicycle. So if I swapped handlebars of my grandfather's bicycle, they're still two distinct things purely because of the way we refer to them. So I'm referring to this as my bicycle, that's his bicycle. So swapping out the pieces doesn't matter. Unless we're saying that the bicycle is defined by its original pieces. But even those it's just a transitory state that material is currently inhabiting. So if you're a human being and you go into a transporter and you come out the other side and the original is destroyed, all I am anyway is a collection of biological functions using base materials that could be rendered down into other things. So really, because I don't believe in a soul or anything like that. So if you're a religious person, it would be a very difficult question, because essentially you've been created by man, not God. The moment you step into a transporter, you're no longer an original creation. You're now a copy. But as I am not a believer in that, you're just the current existing state of those particles gathered together into a system, whether it be a bicycle or a human being, is one way of looking at it.
Well, I mean, you can always look at everything like that. So one of the cool things, I just tried to get into this door, but I don't have... Someone took the anvil, so I'm going to have to go and find that.
Sake.
I think the ogres have got it, so I'm going to head that way. Well, it's the same thing where I think that you have a couple of atoms from Einstein and Hitler and stuff as part of you, because everything gets recycled around. Do you see what I'm saying? In the same sense that, we're made up of atoms
stars
that come from somewhere else. Yeah, so a supernova blew up and coalesced into a big cloud of dust, which coalesced into Earth, and some of those particles came from that supernova are now us. And it's nice to think of things like that, actually. But I guess more of the question really about the whole transporter object is if there's some sort of what defines awareness and consciousness, and I guess that the big question is, it's a little bit like the philosophical question of the Matrix. How would you know if you were in a machine?
Well, yeah. So simulation theory, isn't it? Is that we could be in a simulation right now? Like that. That's a big question.
Yeah, in the same way, you could have been created 10 minutes ago,
right?
And had all of your memories implanted. You could, because you don't know. We live in the present. We live in the current, in the moment. And all of our memories could it be easily just false and implanted. You think, well, that can't be. I think that it's nice. I think that it's complicated.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big old question. The nature of reality. It's something that scientists have struggled away with for a long time, and partly it's why we do things like the Large Hadron Collider and stuff. Because I think being able to smash particles down into atoms and things implies an extremely complex computer would have to... Because one of the things in Star Trek, going back to Star Trek, okay, this is a really interesting thing. There was a Star Trek episode where I think it was Riker got captured.
Red
or someone
alert.
got captured by the Romulans, okay?
Yep.
And they had him in a holodeck simulation.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think he was either back on the Enterprise or something. Everyone was a little bit weird. And the reason he figured out what was happening was because very occasionally there would be a little bit of lag in the program.
Right.
Now, they didn't call it lag back then, but that's what it was. It was like ping.
Right.
And so basically he would ask for a specific response that was quite complicated on the computer, and the computer wouldn't be able to do it quite quick enough. It would have this lag, and that's how he sort of knew that it was a fake reality. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that if with the Large Hadron Collider, you know, because we're smashing together these things and seeing quarks and stuff, you know, doing crazy complex stuff, it implies that if we were a computer program that was just sort of left to run, you know, but it's a very, very, very deep computer program, a very, very complex computer program, to the point where the amount of bits and bytes required would be enormous. But yeah, that's just me blabbering about.
No, it's interesting because I think the assumption that we have figured out that we're not in a simulation because surely no computer could be this fast is kind of like saying that if you went back to the 70s and told them that you could have something this complicated, like on a computer, that they would say, oh, but no computer could be that fast. And I feel like if we're talking about simulation theory, the idea of a computer that isn't infinitely complicated and amazing and brilliant is kind of short-sighted. Like, it's completely possible. Because if we have computers now that are way more complicated than they were 30 years ago, imagine a computer 10,000 years into the future or 100,000 years into the future, how much more vastly, infinitely complex that's going to be.
Well, that's what they talk about happening fairly soon. So there's a thing called the Technological Singularity, which is pretty near. So it's the point at which computers can design faster computers.
Yeah.
Right? So computers can independently make themselves faster and faster, and that will be something fairly exponential.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just some elves trying to capture an ogre for some goddamn reason. I don't know why they want to do it.
It should have taken his log away, honestly.
I mean, that's what you'd think the first thing that you do is, right? I'm like, oh, it's a bit sad, isn't it? Poor old ogre. So anyway, they're all just going to attack me. So I'm gonna have to deal with them.
Uh-oh.
This is fine. There's a fight. I don't mind. But no, I think like so you heard about the technological singularity,
right?
It's the point at which basically things start spiraling quite quickly, not out of control, but to have computers go faster and faster and faster, because if once a computer can design a faster computer, it will very, very rapidly go up and up and up from there.
Yeah. Exponentially.
I read an article yesterday about the Google's Deep Thought or something beating a guy who plays Go.
Okay.
Do you know what Go is?
Yes, I read about that. Yeah.
It's like a super fucking hard game. And so this Google AI, it's called AlphaGo, but it's powered by something called DeepMind. Okay. This British computer company, DeepMind, bought by Google in 2014, is playing Go against this guy, and it actually learned how to play itself. Okay, so it wasn't coded; it learned how to play the game, and so Lee Sedol was quite broken up about losing, right, to this computer. He was almost like quite surprised and shocked that it could beat him.
Wow.
So today, actually, 3 hours ago. So this is probably going to happen. Like, this is probably 2 weeks ago for the viewers.
Right.
3 hours ago, it beat him again. It's won 2 games in a row. So after the match, world champion Lee Sedol said, "Yesterday I was surprised, but today it's more than that. I am quite speechless. I feel that AlphaGo played a nearly perfect game." And so he's sort of quite. Yesterday when he saw it, he said, "Oh, I think I could do better." But today he's like, "I don't know how I could do better."
Wow.
It's apparently it's like super complicated, because chess AIs have been around for a little while,
right?
You know? And you think, well, a computer like beating someone at chess is pretty impressive, because chess is fairly complicated, but Go is apparently like super complicated. So I don't reckon it's too many more years before we see stuff changes really quickly, which is exciting. It's exciting to be alive at a time when so many things change so much, and so many things are potentially very impactful to the world. You know, AI, climate change, stuff like this.
But you know what? A lot of people are saying that, for instance, the way that retail is changing. Like I do worry. This is going back to what we were saying about the future being a good thing. I do think if you think about the 50s when they were talking about what the future is going to be like for working people, they were like, people won't have to work as much. They'll because of efficiencies and computers, they'll be able to do 2 or 3 hours a day and get all their work done. But instead, work has expanded so that now people have to work harder, longer hours, for less money in real terms. And now they're saying that a lot of people working in jobs that can be replaced by robots will be replaced within the next 30 or 40 years by robots, because companies have no compulsion to hire a person when they can hire a robot. It's the perfect workforce.
No. Uber's a great example. Uber is someone who is investing hugely in autonomous cars, because if they can replace their entire taxi driver service with robots, they will do so in a second. But these things shouldn't, if we do them properly,
we won't.
They shouldn't cause mass. It becomes, look, if people, it depends if all of that profit goes to rich people or not.
It will.
If we have a society where the 1% still take all of the benefits, then we're going to have the society's going to continue to get worse. Like, for a long time, I'm not saying socialism is, I'm not saying any political system is the answer or better than others or worse, but I think that we can't begin to address it. It shouldn't be a bad thing that computers take over, right, and do the work for us. Right?
Right, I agree.
Not the computers take over.
I agree. I'm not saying that I would rather.
Us, but
I'm not saying I would rather have people working in a car factory or digging in a coal mine. If we can get robots to do that, that's great. But the problem is, it's not like we're inventing other jobs to replace those ones. Like, it's not like we're saying to people, well, now that the machines are doing all the shit work, we can all just take the day off and just chill like 5 days a week instead of only 2. So now you only work 2 days a week, and we'll make the same money because it's all going to work out and it's fine. What they do,
but we shouldn't need to. I think that there's a difference. I think there's if computers and robots take over a lot of the jobs, that should be a good thing for our society, right? It should mean that we can focus more on the things that are important, and education and healthcare and, I don't know, things where we do need people.
Who's going to pay for it, Lewis?
What do you mean, who's going to pay for it? It'll be paid for.
Who's going to pay for it?
Well, it'll pay for itself, because we're not having to pay for all these other things that the computers are doing for free.
Yeah, but then where are people going to get the money to buy shit?
Well, that's the problem with this. Well, it won't. It's about stuff, right? If there's a massive breakdown in a financial crash, okay, right? If there's a big financial crash and a lot of things, a lot of money disappears, right? A lot of debt gets wiped out, a lot of house prices go down, a lot of things all collapse financially, okay? That is not going to be the end of everything, right? The factories aren't going to burn down. The world isn't going to sink into the ocean, right? The land isn't going to disappear. The mobile phone masts aren't going to fall over. Okay, everything is still going to be here, and people are still going to want to buy Apple iPhones and still want to play video games and still eat blueberries, right? All of these things are still there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just that the wealth and who owns it is distributed differently, right? So, in terms of everything we understand is in terms of money and dollars and pounds or currency, okay? And that's the only real sort of benchmark we have. But imagine the price of food goes up 100%. Then your pounds, they don't quite mean as much as they used to, right? Because all the prices have changed on everything. Or imagine the price of food drops by 99%. When your benchmark kind of is shifted, it doesn't quite make sense anymore. What I'm saying is that the wealth is always there, but it gets redistributed in these moments of turmoil. Okay, so did you see what I'm sort of vaguely getting at here? I
do, yeah. I mean, it's like I just feel like if you if you have a point in society where very few people are actually working or having careers or any kind of sort of... Why did we kill that guy? Menpuigra. He was just standing there.
I've no idea. He was just a creepy guy. He needed to die.
Well, he's got given the plague to one of us.
Yeah. It's not good, is it?
All I'm saying is, right, if we have a society where robots are doing loads of work, companies are therefore... Like, they're not going to say, because the robots are doing the work now, we're going to lower our prices because it's not costing us as much. That's not why they did it. They didn't do it as a favor. They did it to cut costs. So now they make more money. That's it. That's the way companies are set up. What do you think is the end goal of any company?
Look,
what would be the dream for a company? Because I can tell you what I think it is.
Look, okay, go on. You go first.
Here's the end goal. The ultimate goal for any capitalist society, especially big companies, right? Let's say I'm a big company. Here is the end result. I want to be the biggest company with no competitors. I've outcompeted all of them. I am the only.
Okay.
I'm the sole
We'll save
provider.
this for the next. We'll save this
right.
for the next episode. All right.
All right.
So I found a wolf. It had an arrow in it. I pulled the arrow out.
Nice.
Okay, and I let the wolf go. Right. I didn't. I healed the wolf, and the arrow and the bow that I found earlier have snapped together.
Oh shit!
And made a legendary bow called Stormcaller. Right, which is totally badass. Apparently, what it also does is it levels up the more you use it. So when you bind someone's soul to it, it will get like better and better.
Holy moly!
And so I can give that to Sagani if I decide to have her back in my party at any time. But currently, I quite like having the monk fella. But yeah, we'll leave this episode here. We'll come back and we'll talk more about politics next time. Oh my God. See you there, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.